So I'm thankful for all the work you've done on this because, as I just mentioned, I find this topic an incredible encouragement. When you get into it, you realize how strong the case is. That's my sense. But let me ask you, how did you first get interested in the topic of Christ's resurrection?
Well, it was my final semester in grad school, so it was the fall of 1985, and I was doing a Master of Arts degree in New Testament studies, and for the first time in my life, I started to have questions about my faith, whether it was true, and it wasn't anything I'd learned. It was just a matter of, people of other worldviews and, religious beliefs. They have every bit as strong feelings about their views as I do. How do I know that what I believe is true? Now, at that point, I was averaging praying probably an hour to 2 hours a day. I was just really dialed into the Lord. I just was enjoying my walk with God at that point. But then I got thinking, well, is this really true, or am I just deluding myself into thinking I've got this relationship with God? What about people of other religious beliefs? Do they have religious experiences? How do I know what I believe is true? And so one of my roommates, who was doing a Master of Arts degree in Christian apologetics, suggested that I go see Gary Habermas. And so I did. I saw him in his office. He was welcoming, and he shared with me the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus and its importance, and that really helped calm down my doubts. And then it was several years later, after I had finished my coursework on the master's degree, that it was about 1989, and I began questioning my faith again. I was running into, as I was sharing my faith with skeptics, they were bringing up objections I wasn't used to hearing, didn't know how to answer, and there was no email back then, so I called Gary Habermas, and I said, what do you think about this? And, he'd point me to the resurrection of Jesus, and he said, Mike, if Jesus rose, Christianity's true, even if, let's say, the Gospels weren't written by the traditional authors, or there's errors in the Gospels, or whatever the objection is. If Jesus rose from the dead, Christianity is true, period. And so that's what got me interested in it initially. And later on, Gary and I are writing a book together, which came to be The Case for the Resurrection of Jesus. And when that was finished in 2000, I guess it was 2002, as we were wrapping it up, I got thinking, well, I said, Gary, you have all these scholars that you have been looking at what they're saying about the resurrection of Jesus, hundreds of them. They come to they're looking at the same data, but they're arriving at different conclusions. Why is that? And who are these scholars? And he said, well, most of them are New Testament scholars. You have a few philosophers here and there, but that's it. And I thought, well, philosophers and New Testament scholars, do they even study how to do history, how to practice history? Have they had any formal training in it? I thought, how would a historian who had been trained as a historian investigate this? So that's what I decided to do for my doctoral research, learn how historians carry on their trade, and then apply it to the resurrection of Jesus and see how it turned out.
Yeah, fascinating. Let me ask you about this, because my experience has been this. I'm curious if you see this in others or if you can relate to this at all yourself. I went into this topic very skeptical that a good case can be made. I just thought, well, this is ancient history, 2,000 years ago. How can we really know anything for sure about something that happened so far back? We could maybe say it's possible, but how strong a case can you actually make? I got into it and I was blown away by how compelling I found the argument personally. Do you find others have that experience? Do you find that as a common experience?
Yeah, I would say there are quite a few who have that if they look into it. I mean, I know of people who were trying to disprove Christianity, and they looked at the evidence for the resurrection and they became Christians, or they were challenged to look at the evidence for the resurrection and they couldn't explain it away, and it looked like the resurrection occurred, so they became Christians. So that does happen, and people like myself have had doubts. And then we look at the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, and our faith is strengthened, it's encouraged. When I was doing my doctoral research, I knew enough about the resurrection of Jesus and I had interacted enough with naturalistic alternatives that I thought the resurrection hypothesis, when I really looked in depth to it, I thought that after looking at it in depth, that it was going to come out on top again. I think what surprised me was how far on top it came out. I didn't realize until I really looked at how a historian carries on their investigations and applying strictly controlled historical method. I didn't understand how good the resurrection hypothesis actually is and how strong it is compared to competing hypotheses.